The Jacobs Well Tragedy. On November 23, 1983, two Texas State University students, Richard and Clark, set out to explore Jacobs Well, a deceptively dangerous underwater cave system in Texas. From the surface, it appears to be a shallow, 25-foot deep hole that many swimmers try to reach the bottom of before surfacing. However, beneath this innocent-looking entrance lies a series of submerged chambers, 3 in total, with increasing levels of difficulty and danger. The first 2 chambers are relatively open and navigable, but the third requires divers to squeeze through a tight, narrow passage. Beyond that squeeze is a chamber about 10 feet tall, with a tiny hole at its farthest edge, only 2 feet in diameter. This passage leads to a 4th chamber, which had already claimed the lives of 2 divers just 2 years earlier when a gravel slide sealed them inside. Richard and Clark, while experienced in open water diving, lacked cave diving expertise. They were in the process of earning their open water instructor certification. Their mentor, Don, was a seasoned and highly skilled diver who had previously recovered the bodies of the 2 men trapped in that very passage. Deeply aware of the dangers, Don often warned others to stay away from the site. In fact, he once tried to seal off the small entrance to the 4th chamber with cement, but other divers removed the barrier and left a chilling message: "You can't keep us out." Don himself had nearly died inside Jacobs Well. During an attempt to explore the 4th chamber, a gravel collapse pinned him in the narrow tunnel. His air tank ran empty, and after swallowing water, he came close to giving up. But sheer willpower drove him to claw through the debris until he escaped. Just as he was losing consciousness, a fellow diver reached him with a spare regulator. On the way back to the surface, the air expanding inside Don's body caused his abdomen to swell to nearly 4 times its normal size. His stomach had ruptured from the pressure, and he emerged in excruciating pain, screaming for help. Despite knowing some of this history, Richard and Clark were intrigued and chose to explore the cave anyway. On that November day, they dove into Jacobs Well and made it to the 3rd chamber. There, Richard removed his tank to fit through the tight hole and attempted to carry it with him. Clark followed, but as he entered, he saw that Richard no longer had the tank and was already suffocating. Clark quickly passed him the regulator so he could breathe. The two began sharing the regulator as they carefully maneuvered their way out of the narrow chamber. Just as they thought they were making progress, they heard a sudden clank, the sound of their tank hitting rock. It was a terrifying realization. They had reached the false chimney in the 1st chamber, a dead-end tunnel that resembles the way out but leads nowhere. Worse, their oxygen was nearly depleted. Clark managed to turn around and swim 75 feet to the surface on a single breath, gasping for air as he emerged. Tragically, Richard was not as fortunate. Disoriented and out of oxygen, he drowned in the cave. The Hermit Cave Incident. On April 5, 1999, 21-year-old Robert Kennedy from Oklahoma embarked on what was intended to be a simple overnight camping trip near Hermit Cave. He was joined by his stepbrother Richard and their friend Ben. That night, gathered around a campfire, the trio shared stories and local legends about the mysterious cave nearby, intrigued by its reputation and largely unexplored passages. The next morning, as they packed up to leave, their curiosity got the better of them. Eager to explore, Robert suggested a quick trip into the cave. Ben, however, had to leave early for work and returned home, leaving Robert and Richard to explore on their own. Entering the cave through its main entrance, they found access easy. Inside, Robert noticed one of the narrow side passages mentioned in the stories. Determined to investigate, he crawled into the passage alone. It was too tight for more than one person. Richard stayed behind at the entrance, and Robert promised he wouldn't go far. As he crawled deeper, Robert encountered a 150-foot stretch of narrow, winding tunnel. The real danger came when he reached a constriction known as the Keyhole Formation. This area was particularly hazardous because once passed, it was impossible to exit feet first. Unaware of this, Robert continued. But when the passage narrowed further, he decided to turn back. That's when he realized the grim truth. He couldn't return through the Keyhole Formation the way he came. His only option was to press forward through an even tighter crevice, hoping it would open up beyond. Unbeknownst to him, the passage sloped downward at a steep 30-degree angle. He squeezed through, exhaling completely just to fit. After several desperate pushes, he became stuck. Gravity pulled him down, and every attempt to move only made things worse. Trapped and struggling to breathe, Robert began shouting for help. Richard, still waiting near the entrance, couldn't hear him. After some time passed with no sign of Robert, Richard ventured into the cave, without a flashlight, since Robert had taken the only one. Crawling in darkness, he called out. Robert responded, yelling that he was trapped. Realizing he couldn't reach him, Richard exited the cave and called for help. About an hour later, a rescue team of 10 arrived and began assessing the situation. Robert was wedged in an extremely deep section, approximately 150 feet from the main entrance, making external drilling impossible. Rescuers were forced to go through the narrow cave itself. The tight conditions made breathing difficult, even for the rescue team, so they installed a ventilation system to pump in warm air. Only one person could work at a time due to the confined space, and manual tools were the only option for widening the passage. Despite their efforts, time was against them. Robert's breathing deteriorated, and he eventually stopped responding, making only faint gurgling noises, an ominous sign of suffocation. After hours of effort, rescuers finally widened the keyhole formation and reached his feet. Though Robert was unconscious, they felt a faint pulse and rushed to extract him. An initial attempt to pull him out failed. A pulley system was considered but ruled out due to the cave's fragile limestone and gypsum structure. With no alternative, rescuers continued digging by hand for another hour. When they finally freed Robert and brought him to the surface, paramedics were ready. Tragically, it was too late. Despite more than 5 hours of tireless rescue work, Robert Kennedy was pronounced dead shortly after being brought out of the cave. The Gollum's Cave Tragedy. On August 18, 2005, a group of 5 friends set out to explore Gollum's Cave, also ominously known as the Cave of Death, due to its dangerous layout and history. They arrived at the entrance around 3 a.m., under cover of darkness. One member of the group chose to remain outside, while the other 4 proceeded into the cave. Their first challenge came almost immediately. To enter, they had to crawl through a shallow pool of water. After navigating this section, they reached a fork in the path and decided to take the left passage. This led them to another small pool, innocent-looking on the surface but deceptively perilous. That pool concealed a narrow underwater tunnel, just 3 to 4 feet in diameter. To pass through, each person had to be completely submerged and swim approximately 15 feet through the cramped space, one at a time. Each of the 4 friends took the plunge, successfully reaching the other side, a chamber with only about 3 feet of breathable airspace above the water. Meanwhile, the friend who had stayed outside grew increasingly concerned. He saw no lights or movement, and the cave had gone completely silent. Worried, he ventured in briefly but still saw and heard nothing. Unsure of what to do, he contacted some experienced cavers for advice, then called the police. Inside the cave, the 4 friends had likely realized too late that the air in the chamber was bad air, a condition cavers dread. This refers to air with elevated carbon dioxide and reduced oxygen levels. In such an environment, even basic physical and mental tasks become incredibly difficult. Your ability to think clearly, move effectively, and hold your breath is severely compromised. Despite the risk, they attempted to exit the cave one by one, but the first person to re-enter the underwater tunnel was disoriented and unable to find the exit. The lack of oxygen and increased CO2 impaired her judgment and breath-holding ability. She never made it out. One after another, the others followed, and each became trapped in the narrow, flooded tunnel, unable to find their way to safety. Rescue teams arrived and attempted to pump oxygen into the cave and water out, while friends and family waited in anguish above ground. Sadly, their efforts were in vain. All 4 bodies were later recovered. Following the tragedy, Gollum's Cave was permanently sealed with cement, forever closed to future exploration. If you liked the video, then make sure to subscribe for similar ones in future.